several years ago, I worked for the government in New Jersey, and there I had done work in human services and ended up heading up a couple of different departments of the state. And in doing that, I found that I did fairly well as far as bringing people together, getting them to work together more effectively, generating interest in volunteer efforts statewide, and just working with folks. And I had an opportunity while I was doing that to do a lot of presentations for different universities at different departments around the state and nationally. So it gave me the opportunity to really develop some skills that I found were not only useful for myself, but other folks were looking for also. I also decided while I was there to get a master's in management because I wanted to better understand how organizations worked. So it's very interesting because a lot of the same behaviors that occurred in organizations you see in families and vice versa. That, every family operates like a dysfunctional organization, and every organization is somewhat of a family in the way that it works. As I started working with organizations after I took an early retirement from the state and started working with organizations, I found that the skills that I was utilizing, the communication skills, were usable in a variety of workplaces, whether they be nonprofits, for-profits, small companies, mid-sized companies. Drug treatment facilities. I've worked with the leadership of drug treatment facilities, bringing them from startup to profitability. So it helped them to be able to go out and market better by being able to present themselves in a way that was not only very understandable, but a way that really engaged the individuals they were speaking to. I've also had the opportunity to, through the work again in the state, started working for Rutgers University and doing training for them. And I was an on-call consultant for them for the last 30-some years, where they would send me nationally to work with different organizations, different companies that had contacted Rutgers, looking for help as far as their leadership, their communications internally, and developing some of the capacity of their leaders to be able to function better and communicate more effectively internally. One of the biggest problems we've had over the last several years that I've been working with extensively with school nurses nationally, hospitals, and again with treatment centers, is working with them on their internal communications. If you've noticed, a lot of people are spending an awful lot of time looking at their phones today and not necessarily each other. As a result of that, what we're seeing a real decline in the ability of individuals to do several things. Number one is to be able to strike up a conversation, to have a conversation, carry it through, be interested in a person other than themselves, and really be able to express themselves in a way that was not only showed interest in the other person, but followed logic over a course of time. Because what we're finding is a lot of individuals today are not paying attention to anything for any extended period. Everything is very short. If it's not 144 characters, we don't want to bother with it. So this is how I started. And finding that what I was doing was helping so many other people, it ballooned. And I was able to work literally with thousands of individuals throughout the state of New Jersey and in neighboring states, doing that work. As I continued to work with different healthcare organizations, and especially the School Nurses and School Nurses Association, I was able to work with school nurse teams around the country. And I've had an opportunity to present at their national conference, both in workshops and keynoting the opening for their conference, and a variety of other opportunities. But each of these has really given me a chance to work with individuals from other, again, small and mid-sized companies, to be able to speak effectively, to present themselves in a cogent manner, and to be able to organize their presentation so that it makes sense not only to them, but to the folks that are in front of them. I've also had the opportunity, because of some of the other work that I've done, to get involved with micro communications, looking at body language, looking at facial expressions, reading eye patterns, understanding better how individuals are reacting to you. So when I'm working with therapists and counselors, teaching them what to look for with their clients and also how to read client behavior, what it has really helped is it's helped them to engage quicker, to find out and to read where they may be struggling with something, looking at them as an opportunity to be able to see if there's an issue that's arising internally for them, so that they can then ask questions regarding the behavioral indicators that they're seeing. And it's been a really powerful tool for me to use with again, just a variety of individuals. It sounds funny probably, but I had a serious illness, and I ended up having a viral meningitis. And this was back in the early 80s. And I came home from work, had this which felt like the flu, caused me some difficulties, ended up in the hospital. It took them about 12 hours to decide whether I was going to live or not. And when it finally came back and said, you're going to be okay, during that period of time, I had done something that nobody else has ever done. And that's, I said, okay, God, get me out of this one and I'll do it differently. But what happened was through that, just through that process of self-reflection, it gave me that 12 hours to really look at it and say, have I done everything I could possibly do with my life? And then in using that, how can I do something to make a difference? And because I really believe all of us are here for a purpose, and we're all here to make a difference. It's just, are we going to take the difference in the time that we have to really apply that? And I try to for myself. I've done a variety of things. I've worked out most of my life, and I continue to do it now. I have gotten into meditation because I find that's incredibly valuable. So what I do now is a lot of the skills that I developed years ago I was a licensed addictions counselor at one time. I was trained as a sex abuse investigator with the state police, and have gone through that and had involved myself in that area for a period of time. But working with dysfunction is one thing, and that was good for a while. But you can only take so much of that before it starts to degrade you. And so in realizing that I had done what I could do there, I couldn't do that any longer and be mentally healthy. This is where I made the change to come to work with other organizations, recognizing that many of the skills that I developed during that period of time could be applied now. And so I work with organizations on stress management. We work with them on looking at how do you develop a healthier workplace. When I say healthier workplace, I'm looking at it not only in a physical sense, but also in an emotional sense. How do leaders actually communicate with their teams in a way that not only empowers them and gets them to do what they want, but helps to build them as people, as individuals, not allowing them to get wallowed into many of the things. Like right now, nationally, we're dealing with the huge crisis of depression. Well, the reality is a healthy workplace is a great place, quite honestly, for someone who, has mental illness to be able to flourish if they can get the right support. Now, the reality is not every workplace is built for that. And so not every workplace is going to be successful in being able to manage that. But the reality is that most workplaces, let me back up for a second. When you think about the number of individuals who are dealing with anxiety, depression, just some basic stuff that many of us go through, about 1 in 4 people right now is dealing with some type of depression at some point in time. That's a lot of folks. So if you look at your workplace and say 1 in 4 people here probably is dealing with that at some point as they're going along and we're working with them, wouldn't it be nice to be able to put together a workplace that supports that person biologically, psychologically, emotionally? to be able to function in a way that can get our needs met and their needs at the same time. Because, most leaders know that you can't just meet the needs of the organization. You also have to meet some of the needs of the people too. So that balance is very difficult to find. And that's really what we do, is we work a lot with organizations to help them to try to find that balance, getting their leaders to be able to maybe be more effective in their communication, understand what the expectations are in a way that people can hear it, understand it, and even take part in it through team building, through vision development, through those type of activities that can clarify what you want. Because to me, clarity is opportunity. When you really can understand what someone wants, you can better meet their needs. So, employees, I really believe for the most part, want to meet the needs of the leadership. But very often there's that disconnect between leadership and the employees, the management and the leaders, to be able to put this together. So having in some cases, a visual model to be able to construct what they want to achieve, getting individuals to buy in at a deeper level and a more robust involvement in what's going on, I think is incredibly important. And this is what I see that we need to do. So to me, it's coming from a personal health perspective, wanting to help create that in other individuals and organizations, to me is what this is all about. I think that I'm very much of a fan on contingency leadership, where the leadership has to be able to move and adjust depending on the needs of the individuals they're working with. Some individuals are going to need a lot of guidance and handholding. Others are going to need to be more authoritative with them and saying, this is the way we do it. This is the way it's got to be done, and we can't accept anything else. We know, we have that. In times of crisis, there's a different form of leadership than there is during normal business as usual. So it really depends on what the needs of the leader is at the time to be able to be adaptable to the needs of the workforce, but also the workforce needs to figure out how to be adaptable also. And I think that that's what we're looking at. Again, it's the balance, right? It's the communications and the ability to be able to understand what each other wants and needs to be able to do this. Now, leaders, you ask the question, is there an it kind of a thing that a leader has, right? The it element. I think that I've seen leaders that come in all kinds of shapes and sizes that are excellent, but it doesn't mean that they all do it the same. And this is, again, where the contingency piece comes in. I'm also a big fan, quite honestly, of emotionally intelligent leadership, of being able to understand and empathize with folks, and then be able to choose what model of leadership you need to apply in this condition to get what that person needs to help them to get what you want. Because to me, it's all about getting folks to accomplish what you want them to do, but in the same time, raising them up in the process. I believe too that that there's that old saying, a rising tide raises all boats. When we build the people around us to become more effective and efficient in what they're doing, it enhances us too. Now, we do it not because we're looking to enhance ourselves, but it's the right thing to do for the other people. The more we can bring other people up, the more it's going to help us to become better leaders and managers. And it's going to help them to become more effective, because as we bring them up, they're just going to be able to advance through the ranks of the organization or move into something else that they choose to do. So I think it's really important, quite honestly, to build other people to their capacity. And to me, a good leader recognizes what that takes to do it. And that's that adaptability to meet their needs where they are. Yeah, and this is why we're pretty narrow in what we do. It's really about communication. It's about leadership. It's about bringing people together the communication skills that we need to establish to be able to get done what we need to get done. And part of that is understanding leadership and what leadership needs and how leaders can be developed so they can become more effective in communicating with those folks that they're trying to lead. And also understanding the needs of the human being, that individual has particular needs that can be nurtured within that workplace environment. So I think that it's important to recognize not only the workplace needs, but the human needs, and the ability to communicate more effectively. For instance, in looking at some of the micro communication styles of individuals, being able to, as a leader, a manager, or even between workers themselves, being able to read behavior, and it just enhances understanding. And when we have better understanding, we can have better buy-in, you can have better results, you have a little or less friction between individuals. And the problem is that many of the individuals that come into our workplaces come in there with all kinds of baggage. So if we can help them not to bring that in and have to deal with it, because quite honestly, if it's a functional workplace, there's less reactivity. People don't come into a healthy workplace and get triggered by all the dysfunction that's going on within it. And so as we look at organizations, all that stuff with families that you were referring to, right? There is a gap, but the gap is recognizing how that applies in an organization. And I don't care, quite honestly, I've worked with healthcare facilities, construction companies, a variety of different entities that are, a lot of it's the same thing. You have people dealing with people. And that's what we work with. We don't work with the finances. We don't work with a lot of the other things that people work with. We work with the communication between people to make it more effective so they can be better at what they do. We work with leadership to help them to become more adaptable and not only thinking outside the box, we show you how to think outside the box. How do you actually do that? How to change your mind. Because I don't know about you, but I'm the toughest person I've ever had to work with. So, so I've had to learn how to get me outside of me. And the same thing with a lot of the folks we work with is how do we get you out of the way so you can become effective? And unfortunately, some people dig in, and I understand that, and that's their style, and that's what they're going to do. I'm not there to change someone by force. I'm there to help them to become different if they would like to be. And quite honestly, if it's working, why would you come to anybody? Right? Why would they come to Cansulta? Why would they come to anyone if it's working? So what you're looking for is you're looking for tools that will help you to become more effective. And that's what we do. It was funny when I started making the change and left government work and said, I've had enough. I went to work for a company that was working on some federal grants that had come out. It was a consulting company. And it was supposed to be a 3-year contract. And 1 year into it, the contract got dissolved. They lost their funding is what happened. So here I was. I had left a 25 years of government service, and that was plenty. And I was on my own with 2 kids in college and 1 in a private school. So when I got my wife to calm down and not be in such of a panic, we were able to, within 3 months, be back in business. Because what we found was that individuals that I had worked with were interested in what I was doing. They were interested in the work that I was doing, not only with the organizations, but with the leadership work that we were involved in bringing groups together and making them more effective, doing the team building that we were doing because of the fact that we were not just taking them through a process. we were looking at them within the comparative of a dysfunctional organization or a functional organization. And very often what we do in the process is actually show organizations what does dysfunction look like, what does functional behavior look like, and what's the difference. And then people begin to self-identify, this is an area where we are doing well, this is an area where we're not doing well. The problem you get into also is that, one is recognizing it. The other is, what do you want to move into? What do you want to become? And folks, to be able to move into something that they want to create, you have to be able to give up what you've done. But the problem is, if you're not clear on what you want to accomplish, you're very unlikely to be able to achieve it, because you're still going to be anchored in what you know. And so what we do is we help folks move from where they are to where they would like to be, because of the fact that we've established clarity in their expectations for themselves and for others, and have brought other people along with them in the process.
I'm sure that's a tough lesson to learn for a lot of people, where it's getting clarity of where am I going, so to know what to do to get to where I want to go.
Yeah, and if you don't know what you want to move into, how do you let go of what you got? And even for individuals, I do a fair amount of coaching with individuals on setting their goals and getting them to actually walk through their goals prior to even setting out to accomplish it. To me, is important, because as individuals, if an individual doesn't have a really clear sense of what they want to end up with and where they want to end up, again, you're not going to release where you are. To be able to drop that anchor and take sail, what you have to do is you have to let go of something and know where you're sailing to. But the problem is a lot of people take off on a goal without having a clear endpoint of what they want to accomplish. What does that actually look like when they get there? How are they going to know it when they've got it? And a lot of times what will happen is individuals will achieve what they wanted, but it's not what they thought it would be. So what does it look like? What does it sound like, right? What do you want to hear when you achieve that? What's going to be different? What are you going to hear differently internally even? What's your internal language going to be? What are you going to hear other people say? What questions are people going to be asking you when you have accomplished that? What if they say to you, was it worth it? And that's a big one. So as we think about, again, moving from where you are to where you want to be, what's it look like? What's it sound like? How are you going to feel when you get there? What would you have to give up in order to do it? Was it worth it? All of these kind of questions. So there's a lot involved with this, and individuals who want to move, again, from where they are to where they want to be, the clearer they are on what they want to accomplish, the better opportunity they're going to have to achieve that goal.
Yeah, that would. I feel like I can feel your passive working with individuals. It's like a little therapy session.
Well, it's funny. I've trained. Literally, I've trained thousands of therapists and counselors, and at Rutgers, the sessions I do there are still in the top 5% for the Office of Continuing Ed, and in working with all of them, I've learned a lot from them too. Because to me, when you teach, you learn. And so by teaching others, I've learned a tremendous amount about not only what I've studied and applied myself to, but also through working with the organizations, learned a lot of what does not work. And to me, it's you have to look at it and be willing to let go of what's not working. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. Folks will continue to do it just because they've always done it. You look at recognizing where you are in the process. You've got individuals who are, I don't remember offhand where the model came from, but you have folks that really have no awareness of what they don't know, right? So they just proceed as though they know things and they're off and running. Then you have individuals who become aware of what they don't know, And now they can become enlightened because of the fact that they can gather information that they realize they don't have, and they can continue to learn. And so to me, learning is a lifelong process. And it's funny, I did a project years ago where we looked at individuals and why they worked in the places they worked. And most of them worked in places that they felt as though they were able to have input into the workplace, that they made a difference, that they were recognized for what they did. And when you looked at the finances were down about 7th. So people really were not working for the money. They were working for the acknowledgement and the recognition and being able to do something and make a difference. So to me, that's what we really look at, is how can we help people to make a difference in wherever they are, right? It doesn't matter to me if you're a gardener and you're weeding gardens. How can you do that in a way that gives you pride and a way that brings you some good feeling from it, which to me is actually more important than the pay that they're going to get. So as we work with it, we think about leadership and how can leadership help those to get that feedback that they need. I think when you get to the point where you think you know what you're doing, you're in trouble. And they talk about it as being unconscious competence, where you kind of have forgotten that you know what you're doing, but you stop learning. And so to me, it's almost going back to that recognition that I'm always questioning, does this work, right? Why is this working? What don't I know about it? What is not becoming apparent to me? What's behind it? For instance, I was doing a training at a hospital one time, and as the training started, some people came in, and one group of them looked like they were all going to cry. And it was like, what's going on here? Now, I could have just proceeded with the topic I was going to be talking with them on. But as I started talking to them, I said, something's happening in the room. And before we can proceed, we need to know what it is. What's the elephant in the living room? Because of the fact that if we don't talk about it first, you're not going to get anything out of this today. And I'm going to be wasting your time and mine. So what's going on? And it took a few minutes to get to it. But what I found was that I think it was 4 of them just got notified before the training that they were going to be losing their jobs, because there was a section in the hospital that they were doing away with. And they were doing a different program within that section. And yet these people were sitting there. And so they were not only grieving, but the people all around them were grieving. So we had to deal with that before we could do anything else. And the interesting thing is that we dealt with that. We worked with that. We got them not only to let everybody acknowledge what was going on, but the folks in the room, I encouraged them and showed them different ways that they could actually support those 5 individuals by using their contacts, by using other family members they know, by using other organizations they know, that they could do run some interference for them. And those 5 people actually were able to be in other positions before the end of the week. So, it worked out very nicely. But if you don't deal with what if you're not dealing with what's right in front of you first, you can't proceed. And a lot of times we just kind of, pass over this stuff and pretend it's not happening. And unfortunately, that's very much in the realm of dysfunction, because of the fact that if we don't deal with what's evident, you can't proceed.
Yeah, I guess what you're I forget what the actual quote is, but it's like the man who knows something knows that he knows nothing at all kind of thing. Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I mean, I think a leader lets the employees teach him or her, because the idea here is that, especially coming into a new facility or coming in as a new leader or manager, you don't know what your people know. And very often they know more than you do initially. Now, you know other things that they don't know, and then you can help them with that. But I think, it's
getting to the point where you can understand or want to understand. It's being interested rather than interesting. I can come in and tell you all the great things that I've done or anything like this. It doesn't matter, because if it doesn't make a difference, it's useless to you. And so to me, it's all about being interested, not interesting. So how can I, in what you need? Like, I just got for this meeting, I got off a class I was teaching this morning on networking skills. And it's advanced networking skills for healthcare professionals. And we talked, I gave them all kinds of tools on how do you start a conversation? How do you break into a conversation? How do you more effectively network yourself? How do you present yourself at meetings in a way that gets you noticed without being grandstanding? What should you do at a meeting? How do you use meetings effectively? How do you walk out with 200 business cards as opposed to 2 business cards? Things like this. Folks need to understand that there's ways to do all of these things. But it just takes some tuning, if you will, because most folks, have some basic skills in lots of these areas or advanced skills in some, but there's some gaps, and that's what we try to help them to understand is where some of those gaps are. For me, interpersonal communication is really, hate to say it, but it's going back to what I was just saying, is the being interested, right? Part of interpersonal communication is that just idea that if I can be clearer on what you need, now I can help you meet your needs. And I'm always looking at the person and saying, if I'm not the person to meet your needs, I know somebody who is. I don't have to be a very smart person. I just need to know a lot of people who are smart. So if I can connect that person with somebody who can do it, I'm going to do that because that's going to be best for them. If I do that, they're going to come back to me, quite honestly. I have individuals today that are after 15, 20 years, I haven't really talked to them much. I had a call the other day for someone who is an advanced public speaker doing national work for a couple different companies. And he called me the other day and he said, listen, I want to get better at my speaking. How can I do that? And so I'm putting a proposal together for him right now on how I can work with him on short-term coaching, because he's really good, but he just is looking to be better. So we're going to do some short-term, probably about a 2-month coaching stint with him to look at videos, look at all he's doing, critique it together, give him some strategies, let him try those. And if he wants to come back to me later, that's fine. And to me, an ineffective consultant can have somebody on the hook for months, years, right? But an effective consultant, quite honestly, works with somebody, helps them to fix the problem, and then lets go because now you've enhanced their skills. So to me, it's getting someone, giving them the tools that they can then use to do what they need to do, rather than being dependent on somebody for that a continual or a constant type of spoon feeding them, little bits and pieces of what they think they may need. I think there's lots of different ways that leaders and managers can improve their communication skills. Number one, I think, is just recognizing the opportunity that they have as far as being a leader or a mentor, that about 85% of our communication is nonverbal. So how can we demonstrate that we mean what we say? So setting that stage, I think, is huge. Another one, quite honestly, is creating a more functional environment where people can actually hear what you say. Because if we're in an environment where there's so much chaos going on around us that we're trying to get a message out, we got to walk the talk. So to me, it's all the consistency in the behavior and in the messaging that's so important. As we're looking at working with managers, one of the problems we get into sometimes is that managers and leaders don't know their roles. You have leaders that are working like managers and managers that maybe are trying to lead when really they need to manage. One of the examples I use all the time is this, I have somebody look through the little hole here in their hand and I say, okay, that's management. This is leadership. Because management really is very focused. It's very intentional. It's very in the moment. Leadership can look through there, but they can't live there. They have to step back to take that larger view to be able to see that and make sense of it. So to me, it's understanding, again, clarity is opportunity, right? Your leaders need to know what their role is and not become managers. They need to know, the role that they're in and not step into other people's roles. You can come in to you can come in to coach it, you can come in to encourage it, but you don't live there. You got to go back. And managers, on the other hand, need to understand that there's a variety of tools and ways to do that. That, different people are going to need different tools. So if you don't have those, think about, where do you get your leadership skills? You learn them first from your parents, then you learn them